In the southern region of Peru lies one of the most extraordinary archaeological achievements on the planet, the ancient sanctuary of Machu Picchu. Even after 6 centuries of exposure to the elements, these massive stone ruins survive almost entirely intact, drawing over 1 million global travelers each year. The story of its modern revelation began in 1911, when the American explorer Hiram Bingham ventured into this dense, unforgiving cloud forest in search of lost cities. On July 24th, only a few days after departing from Cusco, a local guide directed him to an astonishing hidden marvel. Perched high upon a mountain ridge at an elevation of 2,430 meters sat the ruins of a sprawling stone city, a place virtually unknown to the Western world. Archaeologists note that Bingham was deeply astonished not only by the sheer scale of the construction, but also by the distance from Cusco and the complete absence of any mention of this site in Spanish colonial chronicles. This majestic city was engineered by the Incas, the builders of the largest pre-Columbian empire during the 15th century. At its peak, the Incan Empire governed nearly 10 million subjects, whose collective labor helped construct its grandest monument. While the empire eventually fractured and fell following the arrival of Spanish conquistadors between 1532 and 1572, Machu Picchu escaped the destruction suffered by other Incan sites. Because the Spanish invaders never discovered its location, the city was spared from being plundered for its gold and treasures, allowing its structures to remain standing through the ages. Known in the native Quechua language as Ayacta, or administrative town, the city is widely believed to have been established during the rule of Pachacuti, the transformational first emperor of the Incas. Today, approximately 200 distinct stone structures still stand on the site. These include residential homes, ceremonial plazas, and sacred religious monuments such as the Temple of the Condor, the Temple of the Three Windows, and the Temple of the Sun. The city itself was strategically positioned on a narrow, precipitous ridge suspended between 2 prominent peaks, Machu Picchu to the south and Huayna Picchu to the north. This expansive territory covers more than 32,500 hectares, which modern researchers divide into 2 primary zones, the agricultural zone and the urban zone. The agricultural zone is defined by a vast network of stepped terraces that gracefully contour the steep mountain slopes. Only a handful of structures overlook the deep valley from this vantage point, most notably the Guardian's House, which served as a lookout post over the city paths and nearby storehouses. In the urban sector, the buildings reflect classic Incan town planning, divided systematically into an upper district known as Hanan and a lower district known as Harin. In traditional Incan urban design, the Upper Hanan district was reserved for the most important and elite religious monuments, while the Lower Hurin district served more residential and utilitarian purposes. This layout reflects the fundamental Andean worldview of duality, where opposing forces are balanced to establish cosmic harmony. Separating these 2 districts is a grand central plaza, measuring 90 meters in length and 25 meters in width. This open space was the focal point where the community would gather for sacred rituals, agricultural festivals, traditional dances, and military parades. Machu Picchu is believed to have been abandoned around the time of the Spanish conquest. By the time Hiram Bingham arrived in the early 20th century, only a few farming families inhabited the ridges. Despite centuries of abandonment, dense jungle growth, and a relentless climate, the buildings have defied decay. However, constructing such a monument in this environment was an unparalleled challenge.
The sheer vertical cliffs and treacherous drop-offs posed constant dangers to the builders. The climate presented its own obstacles, with the region receiving up to 2,000 millimeters of rainfall per square meter annually, mostly concentrated within a single wet season. Incan architects were acutely aware of the destructive potential of water, particularly the threat of devastating landslides on the steep Andean slopes. To prevent the entire city from sliding into the abyss, they engineered a sophisticated subterranean drainage system beneath the terraces. Scientific investigations have revealed the ingenious internal design of these agricultural terraces. As stonecutters chiseled blocks to construct the outer retaining walls, the builders collected the leftover stone fragments and rubble to pack the interior of the terraces. This was done using a highly systematic layering method. The base layer consisted of coarse stones and large rock fragments, topped by a layer of fine gravel and sand, and finally finished with a top layer of rich, fertile topsoil. When heavy rains fall, the water easily filters through the topsoil, passes through the sand and gravel, and drains harmlessly down to the bedrock and into the valley below. Without this terracing system, the mountain slopes would have washed away long ago. These terraces provided nearly 5 hectares of arable land for cultivation. While this agricultural output was not sufficient to sustain the city's entire population, requiring them to import supplementary food from neighboring regions, research suggests the terraces served another vital purpose. Pollen analysis indicates that the Incas cultivated various crops here, including corn, quinoa, and coca. This suggests the terraces functioned as an agricultural laboratory where priests and farmers experimented with domesticating low-altitude valley plants to thrive in high-altitude environments, and vice versa. Beyond agriculture, some architectural experts argue that these terraces also served an aesthetic purpose, artistically sculpting the landscape to mirror the sacred geometry of the surrounding mountains. In the urban sector, the terraces were filled with similar stone debris and construction waste to serve as solid, earthquake-resistant foundations for the city's buildings. Engineers estimate that more than half of the total human labor required to build Machu Picchu was dedicated to these invisible underground efforts, including the foundations and the drainage channels. It was an epic undertaking of planning and manual execution. Remarkably, the builders managed to design this complex city entirely in their minds, without the use of paper, draft plans, or mathematical instruments. They extracted, carved, and transported massive blocks of granite without relying on the wheel, draft animals, or iron or steel tools. Within the heart of the city, an ancient quarry remains, filled with scattered rocks that offer a glimpse of the chaotic state of the site before its completion. To ensure the structures would stand forever, the builders selected the hardest and most resilient granite available. Their efforts were driven by a profound concept of eternity, viewing stone as an immortal medium that would preserve their legacy for generations to come. To transport these colossal stones from the quarry to the construction areas, they utilized earth ramps and sheer physical strength, dragging the blocks with heavy ropes over paths of sand or wet clay. Depending on the size of the stones and the terrain, they also used wooden lever systems resembling ladders or rolled the heavy blocks over hard stone cylinders. Once the blocks reached the walls, the true difficult work began. The true genius of the Incan stonemasons is revealed in how precisely they carved the stones and fitted them together. Builders would carefully mark the contact points on a block, chisel away the excess stone to create a perfectly matching surface for the block below, and then lower it into place, removing temporary wooden wedges. To achieve an absolute seamless fit, they employed a meticulous trial-and-error process using fine sand. They would spread a thin layer of sand over the lower block and place the upper stone on top. When they lifted the upper stone, the impressions left in the sand revealed exactly which high spots needed further carving. They repeated this process until the joint was completely tight. The Temple of the Three Windows stands as a prime example of this unmatched masonry. While cutting and roughing out the stones was relatively straightforward, the seamless joining of these multi-toned blocks represents an extraordinary technical feat. Even the inner, hidden joints of the walls were carved with curved, interlocking surfaces to ensure maximum stability during seismic events.
This level of craftsmanship, applied to surfaces that would remain completely hidden from view, is often compared to the legendary stone carving mastery of Michelangelo. Once the stones were successfully positioned, the masons finished the exterior surfaces by either polishing them perfectly flat or carving them into a slight, elegant convex curve. However, the style of masonry varied depending on the function of the building. Simple agricultural terrace walls were built using basic field stones and mud mortar, while highly sacred temples required the prestigious ashlar style, featuring perfectly rectangular, finely polished blocks with no mortar at all. Some walls utilized the Cyclopean style, composed of massive interlocking boulders that fit together with absolute precision. This variation demonstrates that the architectural style was directly linked to the spiritual and administrative significance of each building. Whether visible on the surface or buried beneath the earth, every wall was anchored directly into the mountain's natural bedrock, which provided the ultimate foundation against earthquakes. Utilizing these methods, the Incas constructed nearly 200 buildings, ranging from simple single-room dwellings called conchas to magnificent palaces and temples, incorporating the trapezoidal doors, windows, and niches characteristic of Incan architecture. Researchers have attempted to estimate the immense labor required for these constructions. By analyzing the masonry of the water mirror room and conducting experimental reconstructions, archaeologists estimate that building just the lower section of a high-quality wall required 18 skilled stonemasons working continuously for approximately 82 days. The initial phase of constructing the entire sanctuary likely spanned at least 8 years. This colossal workforce was mobilized through the mita system, a form of mandatory public service where subjects of the empire contributed a few months of labor each year to state projects. This organized labor tax allowed the Incan state to execute its grand visions. In the Andean world, astronomy was deeply intertwined with daily and religious life. Observing the movements of the stars and tracking the solar calendar allowed the Incas to predict the changing seasons, schedule planting and harvesting cycles, and establish a sacred calendar of rituals. Machu Picchu was designed to reflect this celestial order. The Intihuatana stone, situated at the highest point of the urban sector on a raised pyramidal platform, is one of the sanctuary's most sacred monuments. Carved from a single massive outcrop of living rock, its name translates to the hitching post of the sun in Quechua. The corners of this sculpted stone align with the 4 cardinal directions, and during the solstices and equinoxes, the sun rises and sets directly over the peaks of the surrounding sacred mountains. During the winter solstice, the shadow cast by the Intihuatana's central pillar points directly toward a specific corner of the platform. At the equinoxes, the shadow aligns with the doorway of the temple standing opposite. For an observer positioned on the sacred steps during the solstice, the sun and the stone align in perfect harmony. The Temple of the Sun also exhibits this profound astronomical alignment. Built atop an organic rock formation, it features a unique semicircular tower of polished ashlar masonry. Inside the tower, the central altar is carved from the natural bedrock surrounded by sacred niches and windows. According to historical hypotheses, during the June solstice, the morning sun shines directly through the temple's first window, projecting a perfect rectangle of light onto the central altar. During the December solstice, a similar alignment occurs through the second window. While modern researchers have demonstrated that these alignments are real, they conclude that the light patterns were likely used for symbolic rituals rather than highly precise astronomical calculations. Aside from its astronomical alignments, the durability of Machu Picchu relies heavily on its relationship with the natural elements. To protect the buildings from the cold mountain winds and moisture, the Incas originally coated the exterior stone walls with a thick layer of locally sourced red or yellow clay plaster measuring nearly 20 centimeters thick. This plaster completely covered the stone joints, creating smooth, insulated surfaces. To manage the heavy rains, the Incas integrated 129 drainage outlets throughout the urban sector. This system channeled rainwater away from the plazas and residential areas toward a central geological fault, which acted as a massive natural drain, carrying the water safely down to the valley floor. This infrastructure allowed the city to process and evacuate up to 13,000 liters of water per hectare every year. However, the Incas did not want to discard all the water. They needed a reliable supply of fresh water for daily consumption and religious ceremonies. To achieve this, they located 2 natural thermal springs on the northern slope of the mountain and constructed a stone canal measuring 749 meters in length. Despite the incredibly steep terrain, they engineered the canal with a precise gradient of between 2 and 5% to ensure a steady, controlled flow of water through the forest and into the city. As this canal entered the agricultural sector, the slope decreased, allowing any excess water to overflow onto the terraces to irrigate the crops. The main flow of water was carried across an elevated aqueduct and into the urban center, delivering the purest water directly to the first of 16 sequential fountains situated near the royal palace. This water system is considered a masterpiece of ancient engineering. From the first fountain, the water traveled through underground stone channels to feed the remaining fountains. The fountains closest to the Temple of the Sun were used for ceremonial purification rituals, while those located further down the stone stairways were used for domestic purposes. The 16th and final fountain, which was closed to the public, was connected directly to the Temple of the Condor. Any remaining water that was not consumed eventually drained into the main evacuation fault, returning to the forest below. This hydraulic system operated continuously throughout the year. Depending on the season, the springs delivered between 25 and 125 liters of water per minute, though the system was designed to handle a maximum capacity of 300 liters per minute. Modern research shows that the water maintained a constant, uninterrupted flow through both the dry and wet seasons. However, the system was constantly being improved. Archaeologists have discovered unfinished sections of the canal network, indicating that the Incas were in the process of replacing mortar and stone channels with larger, precisely fitted granite blocks to prevent water loss through ground infiltration. To transport this water, residents used beautifully decorated ceramic vessels of various sizes, which they filled at the fountains and carried on their backs.
For decades, historians believed that Machu Picchu was constructed around 1450 based on Spanish colonial documents written after the conquest. Because the Incas did not possess a written alphabet, they relied on alternative methods to record information, such as the quipu, a system of knotted, colored cords used to keep numerical records, censuses, and historical accounts. Unfortunately, the ability to read these complex codes was largely lost over time, leaving many records indecipherable. To establish a more accurate timeline, a collaborative team of international scientists initiated a project using advanced carbon-14 dating techniques on organic materials excavated from the deepest layers of Machu Picchu. By analyzing plant fibers, textiles, and corn kernels associated with the earliest construction phases, researchers determined when these organic materials died. The carbon-14 analysis revealed that the Incas were established in the region much earlier than previously assumed, with construction beginning as early as 1420. This discovery shifts the timeline of the Incan Empire back by several decades, indicating that Emperor Pachacuti began his conquests earlier and that his reign lasted much longer than historical documents suggest.
Ultimately, Machu Picchu remains a timeless testament to human ingenuity. By harmonizing their architecture with the natural landscape, utilizing stone, water, and the movements of the cosmos, the Incas created a sanctuary that continues to inspire awe and wonder across the world.